Israel and Iran update. Let's do some geopolitics. Is the war between Israel and Iran over? Geopolitical update. Let's give an objective, unemotional assessment of what has been happening between Israel and Iran. As you guys are aware, I've been reporting on geopolitics on this channel for a decade this year. And so let me give you my take without any propaganda, without any spin, just my objective analysis. The only spin will probably be the fact that I'm a white man that comes from Australia. So therefore, I don't want to die. And I don't want my civilization or me to die. So that's the lens I will probably be putting over the top of it. But the rest of it will just be objective, as if I'm just an objective observer. Whoa, sorry. So let's just get straight into it. Let's just have a little bit of a recap, and I'll give you guys my take on how Iran can actually win this. Now, how is the United States and Israel going to win this, and what's their grand strategy? I'll give you guys my take on what China's strategy will be, what Russia's strategy will be, and how that's going to reflect on Iran and the difficult choices that Iran needs to make in order to come out on top here. So let's get started. A little bit of a recap. Israel is committing a genocide. 99.9% of the world agree with that. Even human rights organizations, I think it's called Bin Selim, within Israel agrees that it is a genocide. So even an Israeli one says that Israel's committing a genocide. The leader of Israel, Netanyahu, there's an arrest warrant out for him from the International Court of Justice. And Israel, sorry about this cough I got all of a sudden. Israel is surrounded by enemies. This is why whenever you see a Ben Shapiro online talking, and one of the talking points is, doesn't Israel have a right to exist? And that's an emotional response, not an objective response. It's not a geopolitical response. Everybody has a right to exist, and simultaneously nobody has a right. You have to earn that right. You have to make yourself exist. You can't just cry out to everybody else. So Israel's surrounded by enemies. Most of those enemies are easily bought off by the United States. They're weak enemies. I think they're heavily religious and peaceful enemies. I know that flies in the face of what everybody else tends to believe, but the fact that Israel still exists while committing a genocide and surrounded by an overwhelming amount of enemies, and they still exist, isn't due to them having a magnificent military, because I know a lot of people say it's a magnificent military, but we've recently seen that it's a weak military and that the Israelis are genuinely weak. So the only reason why Israel exists is, my understanding is that all of their enemies that surround them mustn't be very smart, they mustn't be very brave, and they're not very well organized or coordinated, and maybe they're just truly religious and peaceful. because I promise you, if let's just say white Australians like myself surrounded Israel, that country would have been crushed fast. Also, keep in mind, don't get me wrong, white Australian men, my bloodline is the reason why Israel exists in the first place, because they're feeding off, you know, the fighting spirit of my bloodline. I know people might disagree with that, but that's true. My bloodline built this and took over the world. So my take on it is that Israel, although they're surrounded by enemies, they're kind of cucked enemies that don't do nothing, or are genuinely peaceful, or are low IQ, or are cowardly. It's one of those things, or a combination of all of them at the same time. Because if they were to be committing a genocide against my people or people that are like me, and all I had to do was just mobilize a few million men with machine guns and just ram down that place and march on through, it would probably happen. And so things don't match up. This is not an emotional, this is not a propaganda video. This is my genuine objective analysis of the situation. Because it doesn't match up with the rhetoric and the propaganda that the Ben Shapiros tell you. Okay? So there's, with this situation, the Israelis have had the ability to go and crush every country in the Middle East one by one and destroy those countries, whether they were democracies or theocracies or whatever, and then put an American-backed leader in power. And the only country left is Iran. Saudi Arabia is another one, but Saudi Arabia is good friends with the United States, and that leadership would probably be overthrown if they did anything wrong as well. So that's kind of the background and the situation, my take on it. And so, in the lead up to this, Israel, with the help of the United States, attacked Syria. It was one country it was the last country on their list, and to go through and put a new leader in place. At that point, I think it's safe, because I think a lot of people are aware of this now, the Chinese, the Russians, and the Pakistanis immediately, this is 6 months ago by the way, they landed their best and their brightest to go and game plan what they're going to do if the United States or Israel attacks Iran. And they had a long time to prepare for this. So no doubt it was, preparing the missiles, getting everything ready, having the ability to strike if Israel was to strike them with the help of the United States. Well, basically, if the United States was to attack them. And, intelligence gathering on where and when and what targets they would hit. And so the lead up to that, and no one knew that, by the way. Putin leaked it. And then after that, the Chinese have been very quiet the entire time. But we found out more information as this 12-day war got on. Israel, with the help of the United States, they launched 200 fighter jets, the F-35s, a bunch of others, and they hit 100 targets across Iran. Massive attack, devastating attack. Within hours of that attack, Iran had missiles in the air firing back at Israel, hitting their targets. Every time Israel would attack, Iran would retaliate. And this went on for 12 days. large parts of Tel Aviv, the city in Israel. For the first time in the history of Israel, did they come up against a country that had similar capabilities, the ability to strike back. And many buildings were destroyed across Israel. Obviously, there was far more damage done to Iran, but for a weaker country that doesn't have the backing of the United States and was counter-punching, didn't go on a first strike, was playing defense, which does feed into my original theory that these countries aren't the crazy countries that they're portrayed as. Otherwise, Iran would have done a first strike on Israel, wouldn't they? So, a lot of that propaganda we can't listen to. We need to objectively analyze what's happening in the Middle East. And if anything, I would say that is projection. So that is the Israelis projecting. They are the ones that are the aggressors in every case. They are the ones committing a genocide, and they are doing preemptive strikes illegally, and we'll discuss that in a short period too, on its neighbors. Now, part of the reason why they wanted to do this attack now is because there was a lot of trouble for the current administration leadership within Israel. This is something that many people would disagree with, but the people who will outright disagree with that are often creating propaganda online. There was the strategy was to try to cover up the genocide and the fact that the Israeli government is illegitimate in the eyes of the world, a rogue state that literally the entire world hates but hasn't done anything about. During this period, Israelis have been banned from entering many countries worldwide. Not my country, Australia, because Israel controls Australia. Australia is a controlled Israeli state. Most people don't know that. And so what we had for 12 days was Israel getting bombed for the first time ever. The Israelis, domestically, they were not only dealing with the fact that they were a rogue state, but they were getting bombed and the entire world was cheering on Iran. The entire world. And even though this is objective analysis, even myself, I was cheering it on. Everybody was cheering it on. Everybody I know was just saying, wow, they're bombing Israel. Everybody. Go online. And the Israelis control the internet in the United States. And so many accounts were being deleted and banned. My channel here has been hit with strikes and warnings. So I've toned down the rhetoric. And so Israel was in a bad situation. And those people are not only conducting a genocide, but they're not people, they're kind of rich kids. Israel's a spoiled rich kid country. The Israelis aren't known for being tough. Israelis aren't known for being good at any sports. I don't think they've ever won any sport, ever. Hasn't an Israeli ever got a gold medal? So they're not just not sporting, they're also rich and spoiled. On the other side, so they're the 1%, the spoiled rich kids, the ones that aren't used to adversity. So the tolerance within the country for anything going wrong, like even one building getting blown up, would cause a lot of stress for the general population because their stamina, their resilience, they're far weaker in general than the Iranians. The Iranians are used to dealing with adversity. Their resilience is high. And so during these 12 days, we would actually see, believe it or not, and I saw these videos, Iranians in the streets cheering, and so they're under fire from Israel, while these Iranians were cheering in the streets, waving flags and celebrating during the war because they were fully aware, even though sometimes bombs were landing near them, they were cheering in the street because they were fully aware that they were this little country, this underdog, going up against the richest country, the most powerful country the world has ever seen's favorite pet. And they were, because of that, what happened was the whole idea that the United States had was we're going to bomb Iran and we're going to take out, they had a few strategies, take out the nuclear facilities, and we're going to try to stress the people out and cause regime change, maybe trigger a color revolution. Our sanctions are going to hurt them and therefore it's going to cause trouble for them. Instead, the opposite happened. Many people have talked about the Iranians rallying around the flag. And I saw the videos of them celebrating. It was a sign of the resilience. While on the other side, in Israel, people were yelling and screaming and crying. There was a video of the head of Mossad and Ben Gvir yelling at each other, yelling and screaming at each other around rubble, while all the media's around filming them arguing because they were fully aware that the Israeli people were not used to this situation and they have zero resilience for it. And there's a lot of pressure on the head of Mossad. His head's on the chopping block. Ben Gvir, Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader, all these politicians, they came under an unbelievable amount of scrutiny during those 12 days. And so you have the Iranians cheering in the streets, happy to take some bombs in order to land some in Israel, while the entire world, because they were fully aware of that. I know a lot of people that might follow Ben Shapiro or whatever, those people, and all of the Israeli media, they probably are going to, twist this as if they were winning. But if they were winning and they were truly happy with it, the situation, then they would continue. It wouldn't go on for 12 days. It would continue because they were winning until they completed the job. But what was happening was the Iranians were becoming more and more happy every day, while the Israelis were panicking, crying in the streets. The politicians and the leadership were arguing. The Israelis were getting banned from entering countries. Even Japan searches Israelis and scrutinizes them and talks to them before entering the country. Even Japan, many countries were banning Israelis. Countries were banning products, imports from Israel, while simultaneously on the other side cheering on Iran. So you can see the rhetoric that you might be seeing and the facts on the ground, because this is objective analysis, was that the Iranians had the support of the world. And the United States because every war needs to have a political outcome. The purpose of war is political. And the Israelis, this war for them was purely destructive and a distraction from their genocide and the illegitimate standing of that government in the world, and all of the victimhood that they had built up over 100 years since the Holocaust, and all of the movies and everything, it was all flushed down the toilet since the Palestinian thing became revived, and now these preemptive strikes on an innocent country that has never done anything to them. And so the Iranians, they launched missiles into Israel, and they looked around to see for the hatred to come to them and say, hey, look, I'm defending myself. And all they got was cheers. Now this is just my objective analysis. This isn't propaganda. This is a fact that everyone was cheering them on. So what happened was the Israeli government decided in the last week before they shut down this war that they were going to lock down. Israelis weren't allowed to leave. Commercial flights were stopped leaving Israel. And for the first time in Israel's history, the Israeli people, the Jewish people that live in Israel, were going to have to fight this uncertain war in the Middle East against Iran with their own men. Now, I know you're probably thinking, what do you mean like with their own men? That's how every country... No, not Israel. No, not the people who run Israel either. They have always used the blood of other men. They buy off a politician, and then that politician takes that money and sends his own men to fight on behalf of Israel, the Israel lobby, Israelis, World War I, World War II, and then the money gets pocketed on both ends by Israelis. This was the first time that they were going to have to fight for their own war. And what happened was Israelis were panicking. I heard of them buying yachts, spending a lot of money, doing anything they could to get out. Lawyers in the United States were triggered. Politicians were triggered. They were all trying to get their people out of Israel. Israel also has the family of Zelensky, who's the leader of Ukraine, who is at war with Russia. Russia is friends with Iran. You can see how this is all starting to get quite messy, quite fast. And you can see why every missile that landed in Israel, even the Russians were cheering it on because they were hoping it would hit Zelensky's family. You see? Because Zelensky's even Ukrainians. Because in Ukraine, there's men. I recently saw a man jump off a building to escape the Ukrainian government that was just snatching men off the street and sending them to the front line to their deaths. Okay, so what happened was Israeli men have never fought wars in their lives. Israeli men have never been resilient and tough and heroic, and they've never been sportsmen. During the Roman times, they never fought anything. They were the ones buying the slaves and betting on them. And now what happens is the Israelis, they just use countries as slaves now and send them to war, and they pocket both sides and bet on them. That's effectively what they've been doing. And so Netanyahu saw this as an opportunity. The Israeli government saw it as an opportunity to kill off their political enemies within the country and use Iran as an opportunity to do that. Iran was going to give them the cover to take out their Netanyahu's enemies within the country. But for the first time I have ever seen in my life, and all of my research through the beginning of history, and people aren't talking about this enough, Israel, because their men were going to have to actually fight for the first time in the history of those people for their own war for the first time ever, they panicked, they cowered, they levered all of their power to get their men out of Israel. They shut down the wall, they shut down everything, and then what they did was they before they were able to shut it down, with all this panic, they had a week, and the United States realized, okay, well, we're going to have to shut it down. We need an excuse to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to send some bombers into Iran. We're going to bomb some of these nuclear facilities. We're going to claim victory and pretend that the whole purpose was to take out their nuclear facilities so that they can't have nukes. And then we're going to shut down the war, and then all of the Israelis get to save the lives of their sons and husbands and fathers, while simultaneously the Ukrainian men are being slaughtered. They can't shut anything down. They can't stop anything. And Putin's happy to shut it down by the sounds of things. It's just they're not willing to shut it down because Zelensky, on the other hand, who is a Israeli, he's not a Ukrainian. Zelensky did a sneak attack with these trucks that they smuggled into Russia for these drones, and they attacked the nuclear, the bombers that were part of an agreement to be publicly displayed. Zelensky attacked them only a few days before peace talks were supposed to happen, and Russia deemed these drone strikes as a terrorist attack. So Zelensky, who is an Israeli operating in Ukraine, he stopped peace talks in Turkey with Russia, between Ukraine, the United States, and Russia, to continue the war, because that Israeli has no problem using Ukrainian men and letting them die for their cause. While simultaneously, the other war in Israel versus Iran, they didn't want to sacrifice their men. If Ukrainian men were in Israel, this war would still be continuing. This bombing campaign would still continue. So the United States came in, Big Brother came in and bombed nuclear facilities. Trump came out and said, it was a 12-day war. This is now a victory. We're shutting it down. We want peace talks. And, the reason why I say that the Israelis are behind Ukraine, and I can see you guys going to leave that comment, is because the same strategy getting the truck across the border into all of those trucks into Russia and have the roof slide open, all remotely operated, and all of those drones come out and attack within Russia. It was the exact same strategy that Mossad used in Iran. That same strategy. And everybody agrees, Mossad claimed that it was them that did it. That's the exact same technology, exact same strategy that only a few months previously they used against Russia. And so it doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to put two and two together and realize that Mossad was behind the attack on Russia as well. There is a historical war that's been playing out for about 300 years, where the Jewish family that took over Britain, their cousins became the monarchy of what is now Russia. And the communists moved in and killed off that monarchy and put in their own Russian government. We call them communists, we give them lots of different names, but really they're just a people that wanted to run their own country. And ever since then, the Israelis have wanted to take out Russia. They've always been against Russia. They've been trying to take them out ever since. So, then just before the United States attacked those nuclear facilities, Iran called Donald Trump and said, we're going to launch some missiles at one of your military bases in Qatar. Qatar. Sorry, everyone's saying Qatar now. And so Donald Trump, the United States, evacuated those bases. They got them to safety. And then just as political theater, as evidence, Iran launched weak, slow-moving missiles that were all but one taken down by the United States missile defense system. And then they called it quits. They agreed, okay, we're going to stop it right here. And that's basically where we're at now. The United States said that they destroyed all of Iran's nuclear facilities. But as of the last couple of days, everybody now agrees that Iran's nuclear facilities and its enrichment capabilities have not been all destroyed. They still have the ability to do so. Now, I would also like to point out the other end of that argument is they don't need to enrich their own uranium. They don't. All they have to do, and Dmitry Medvedev posted that, he tweeted this, you can go check out his Twitter. He made it very clear that multiple countries would be willing to just give Iran a nuke. So if you're thinking that, Iran needs to develop it themselves, no, it's like Israel having to develop something. They get it all from Uncle Sugar in the United States. It's all given to them. It's all gifts because they, control the political system in the United States. Iran can just buy a nuke from Pakistan. Pakistan might even give them a nuke for free. So, that's not an argument, and it discounts all of the rhetoric and all of the propaganda that's coming out of the United States. And so what we do is we have a look at that and go, okay, so what was the United States' grand plan here? Well, they were sucked into this war because the preemptive strikes were conducted by Israel. Well, that's what we know so far. It's hard to say because the United States and Israel are basically the same thing at this stage. Now, the strategy from Israel's point of view, let's go through the strategies of all the different countries. Israel's strategy, believe it or not, is to weaken the United States. I know that's going to come across the wrong way, but their strategy is to suck as much resources out of the United States, weaken the United States, use American men to die on the Holy Land, serving the Israelis, and basically part of a Torah moment where they fulfill prophecies. And part of that prophecy has to be the destruction of Iran. Now, the political ends of destroying all of the countries, genociding people viciously all over the Middle East, is so that Israel can just have these destroyed, backwards, uh, non-existent countries left that have just been decimated by war, and that Israel is the strongest in that region, and make the United States do all of that destruction. And that's reflected in how they conducted the war against Iran. The goal was basically go in there and just destroy your opposition and create as much devastation as possible, as much death and destruction as possible. That's the only purpose for it. It is a vicious, violent attack without any purpose of, I remember Donald Trump got a lot of criticism for saying, oh, we're attacking this country because they have oil. And people were disgusted in that. But when you look at the strategy that Israel has, it is purely destructive. It is mass murder, it is genocide, and it is to destroy the infrastructure of every other country in the Middle East and leave them poor, broken, weak, so they have to do what Israel tells them to do. It is a truly violent, destructive strategy. And historically, the Israelis have always been that way. This is why it was really difficult for Jewish people to ever have a country. Maybe it's just the way they are, but when you have a country, you not only have to have hard men to defend that country, which Israeli and Jewish people don't have, you also have to see your enemies as partners. You have to have rational, constructive conversations with them and diplomacy, which the Israelis and the Jewish people in general have never had from the beginning of time. This is why they don't have a country. This is why, it's not that everyone's out to kill them. It's that they started first, and then it becomes a vindictive war against them. And that's what they've done in the Middle East. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. The goal of Israel is to get the United States sucked in, and they have. Many people would agree that Israel, since 9/11, has really done nothing but destruction of the United States, their reputation internationally. Soft power has been weakened, their hard power has been weakened. Domestically, they're no longer the United States they were 25 years ago. Israel has done a very good job of destroying the United States, and that is part of their goal. Their goal is to make weak the United States, use all of its resources up to destroy as much of the Middle East, and they've been very successful in that as well. And the goal is to not have a regime change in Iran. It is to destroy all of their facilities, maybe starve the people out, maybe murder most of the Iranians, and destroy the country, destroy their farmland, even destroy their businesses, destroy everything, and hope that they either just go away. Many people that have been attacked by Israel have then flooded into Europe. Mass migration, refugees, and that is directly as a result of the actions of Israel. Okay? And so they're very close, and many people have been talking about the religious aspects of what Israel is trying to do here. That it is this vision that they have of bringing forth the Antichrist And part of that vision is not only the destruction of the United States, but also the destruction of all of their enemies in the Middle East. Now that's not a very good strategy. And when you look at how poor that strategy is, it's such a terrible strategy that you can see why Israel probably doesn't have a good future ahead. Because when the United States disappears, there's going to be millions of people in the Middle East that will probably do everything in their power to go and crush Israel. It'll be interesting to see how much longer Israel lasts as a country as it is right now. I don't see it lasting too much longer. But from what I can see, that's the only strategy they have. And you can Google maps of what they want Greater Israel to look like. And it means that they have to take almost a large part of Saudi Arabia to create Greater Israel. So keep that in mind as well. So the strategy of the United States. What was the strategy of the United States? It is still hard to see what the strategy is. Now, the United States has a bit of a problem here, because when Iran threatened to shut off the Strait of Hormuz, the United States had 3 aircraft carriers in there. Iran has the ability to just use a few hypersonic missiles and take out those aircraft carriers, while simultaneously increasing the price of fuel. The cost of a barrel would skyrocket if the Strait of Hormuz was shut down, and that would create a lot of inflation in the United States, while Donald Trump is trying to get those interest rates lowered so that he can spend more money. He wants to spend the money before the empire collapses. He doesn't want to spend his entire 4-year term, drill baby drill, keeping the oil prices down, trying to keep inflation down so that he can somehow, convince the Reserve Bank to lower interest rates so he can spend more of the American empire. And it doesn't seem to me that the United States, Donald Trump's administration, has a long-term strategic plan. It is a reactive plan, a reactive strategy that is vaguely around the idea of, if we can keep a strong Israel there, maybe we'll be able to use them for our benefit in the future. Maybe if we can somehow weaken Russia, and then somehow we'll be able to move all of our resources. This is the United States. The United States is probably thinking, then we can somehow move all of our resources to the South China Sea and then start figuring out how to weaken China's economy over the next 50 years or more. And as I explained in yesterday's video, China's new strategy is to use Laos, Cambodia, and they're in the middle of a trade war between Cambodia, which is a proxy of China. Cambodia just launched a trade war with Thailand, and they're digging trenches along the border with Thailand to prepare for a land invasion and to go to war with Thailand. Japan's freaking out. India said that they're going to join in. And that will be a land battle that China would have superiority over. They will have the ability to control that entire region. I don't think India would have the ability to protect Thailand. I don't think Thailand would be able to do anything about it. Japan definitely wouldn't have any power over that area either. And then China will use Thai Thai's land and Cambodia to, get um, their exports out and into the Thai Sea, and then they'll use the bottom part of Thailand as a land bridge, or they'll dig another canal through there, so that um, they don't have to worry about the United States when they eventually come to Asia, and it becomes a very serious problem, a conflict between the United States and China in the sea. They'll have a backup plan through the land. China's also done a very good job of destabilizing Myanmar. China's got the Israeli strategy in Myanmar, where they back rebels on both sides. One side gets in the ascendancy, so then they divert cash to the other side. All they're trying to do is continue the conflict in Myanmar and create as much devastation as possible. Myanmar has a lot of resources, believe it or not, that China wants. And so they're going to continue that conflict for as long as it takes. That's also flooding a lot of refugees into Thailand, which is kind of destabilizing that country. And they have totally colonized Laos and Cambodia that are ready to go and take part of that whole region. So China's expanse is about to start being realized, and it's not where most people thought it would be. They thought it would be through the sea, but that's just ridiculous. Taiwan is a very dangerous thing for China to be messing with. China's a land power. They don't want to be messing with the sea. Not yet. And so, finally, I'd like to talk about Iran and how Iran could win this war. I think the Iranians are now realized that for the last 50 or more years, all of that rhetoric has now come home. They've been slapped in the face with the realization that Israel and the United States could strike Iran at any moment. And I think that the airstrikes might continue soon. Iran, my understanding is they are no longer going to allow anybody to do any inspections there, and it is hard to say whether the Iranians even want to have sanctions relief at all. Now, what would be the strategy with Iran moving forward? And this is the beauty of geopolitics. This is what makes this so much fun, is because you can have a look at all of the problems that Iran has, and you can start to game plan and start thinking of all of the scenarios that could play out. And the beauty of this is, people talk about Russia. They say that the Russians play chess and the Americans play poker. They're always bluffing. The Russians are advising, I dare say, with the help of the Chinese, the Iranians. Now, the Iranians, they have so many levers that they can pull. My understanding is that they are the breadbasket of that area. All of the Middle East relies on food from Iran. Iran has about 100 million people. They have farmland. They also are the China, the factory of the Middle East. So a lot of the cheap goods are manufactured in Iran already because they've been under sanctions for such a long time already. They've had to diversify their economy. On top of that, they're the breadbasket. Now, Iran possibly could, as a lever, they could shut off all food to multiple countries around Israel. I haven't done research to figure out how much food is bought by the Israelis, but I doubt they're reliant on food from Iran anyway. Iran could possibly shut down exports of food, divert a lot of that to Russia and China quite easily. And that would cause an unbelievable amount of pain for all the countries that surround Israel, and might cause a lot of trouble for Israel. The other issue with Iran right now, and I think they made a strategic blunder, is they stopped sending missiles into Israel the moment Trump said that it's over. So now they've lost all of their leverage. If Iran had of, even today, continued to launch missiles into Israel and not allowed all of those important people, because if you have a look in Israel, the people who wanted to get out and stop the lockdowns, they were the rich people. They were trapped there. They were kind of, in a way, being held hostage by the Netanyahu administration, while simultaneously the Iranian government, they were working together against those wealthy American Zionists that were in Israel at that moment. And Iran had the ability to continue launching on Israel, even though Trump said that there's a ceasefire, and just not stop, just keep launching. And say, look, hey, like, we're going to keep launching until we get what we want. I don't know. I'm sure they could get creative and start asking for some fancy things. We want sanctions relief right now while we're launching on you. We want you to do this. We want you to sign an agreement that the United States will never launch on us again. We want an agreement that sanctions will be totally relieved. We want access to American markets, and we're going to have our own nuke. They could probably ask for quite a lot, considering the leverage over the lives of such important people were under threat at that moment. They've now lost that edge because all of those people are now out of Israel. They've only left the brown Israelis left. If you have a close look, they look kind of brown and weird looking, and the rich ones have all left. I dare say Zelensky's got his family out as well. So, Iran lost that edge. So the strategy with Iran and how they could win, my understanding is, and this has been war gamed many times in the past, is to somehow convince the United States to land troops on Iranian territory. That's the ultimate goal for Iran to defeat the United States, is to suck them in and then trap them into a long, protracted war where they have troops on the ground. And I think the United States is fully aware that that would be an awful mistake, and that's why they went in, bombed Iran a little bit, panicked. They realized that, Israel, it wasn't just that Israel was all of the rich people in Israel that were panicking. There was also the fact that the United States realized that Iran had the ability to launch on almost all of those military bases in the Middle East, and then take out their supply lines and almost isolate all of those bases that the United States has there, and force the United States into dropping a nuclear weapon on Iran. And what that would do is, if that was to happen, it would signal to Russia and China and Pakistan and North Korea that if anything gets even slightly heated between those countries and the United States, they need to preemptively launch nuclear weapons on the United States. That's what the United States would be signaling. And this is what Iran would have been dealing with, the threat of that happening. If the United States didn't do it, then almost all of those bases that the United States has in the Middle East could possibly be destroyed. The Trump administration would be forever remembered as a failure. So far, it is a huge failure. It hasn't really achieved anything yet. And Iran could do an unbelievable amount of damage to the United States. The ultimate goal from the Iranians would be to create a Vietnam-style war where they suck the Americans in. And at this stage, it's not just that the United States wouldn't have the capabilities of doing that. The fact is, Iran isn't actually hated by the American people. If anything, Iran is becoming more and more popular every day. Because if Iran, and this is another fact, if Iran was really that evil empire that the Israeli propagandists out there and even the Trump administration likes to tell you, then they would have the political will to do that and launch an actual war against Iran. But they don't. There were so many reasons why Donald Trump had to shut it all down, under a lot of pressure from the rich Israelis that were scared, but also the Americans realized that those bases were in a lot of trouble. They started to realize that they might have to nuke Iran or land 1 million troops in Iran to try and forcefully overthrow the government. And they wouldn't have the ability to do that because Iran is so popular. And it's not because Iran is popular, it's more that Israel is so unpopular. If Israel was so popular right now, then everybody would be hating on Iran. But I cannot see anybody online, even the Zionists, the propagandists, the Ben Shapiros out there, I cannot see any of them explaining how evil the Iranian government is. I haven't seen it. I haven't actually seen it anywhere because they just, even under these circumstances, they can't get away with slandering the Iranians because everyone's aware that they were the victims of a first strike attack. And then the United States came in and just bombed all of their nuclear facilities. And so really the United States had only a few different options, didn't they? Land 1 million troops on the ground, try to overthrow the government from within, forcefully do what they did to the Syrian government. They realized that that wouldn't work, and all 1 million of those American troops would get murdered overnight. Because it'll be them versus 100 million angry Iranians that have rallied and become more and more nationalistic. And if you have a look online, Iranians are kind of the heroes of the Middle East at the moment. Iranians are proud of themselves after this war. They're claiming victory. All of them are claiming victory. There were celebrations when Donald Trump tweeted ceasefire, and they realized that they won this. The Israelis are still crying in the streets and panicking. So from Iran's point of view, if it was to become a long, protracted war, Iran also, from the United States and Israeli point of view as well, that they would then have to get loans from somewhere to continue launching missiles into Israel. They might even get a nuke from Pakistan. Who's going to fund that? It's going to be China. And so what would happen is, at the end of the war, after all of the destruction, while Iran and Israel are then rebuilding at the end of a very long war where they're launching missiles for years into each other, while China is getting rich off that. And all of those loans would have to be, taken care of by China. And then at the end of that war that Israel and the United States would start with Iran, what would happen is China would end up controlling Iran at the end of that. And then the question would be, who would be able to rebuild faster, Israel or Iran? My money's on Iran because Iran would be backed by the Chinese, and we all know how fast the Chinese build these days. And so Iran would be built faster. They would have all their missiles back and stocked faster. And then the next up-and-coming war, if they were to do it again, Iran would have a massive advantage over Israel in the next 5-10 years. And a lot of the strategy would be conducted by China. And so the people looking at this from the United States point of view, they would start thinking, oh, this isn't just today, this isn't just 2 weeks, this isn't just 1 year. This is China owning Iran, Iran being, sucked into a massive debt trap with China, which only helps China, strengthens China. BRICS becomes more powerful because of it. The United States becomes weaker because of it. And then the next war after that could be the total defanging and regime change in Israel in the next 10 years. And so the United States has to take all of that into account. And I think they did, and they realized that. And so now my understanding is they're trying to have talks with the Iranians. And we haven't found out yet, but if you have a look at the social media from the Iranians, they're not in any mood to take any orders from the United States at the moment. As far as they're concerned, they won, and the United States needs to come grovel to them and offer them something. So things have changed a little bit. And that's kind of where we're at the moment. Okay, so what do I think is going to happen moving forward? Okay, so that's the basic strategies of all of these countries. What I think will happen moving forward, it depends on if there's going to be sanctions relief, if the United States is going to do that. The offer is that the United States has offered, I think it's $30 billion to do uranium enrichment outside of Iran, and then they will just give the materials to Iran for their nuclear facilities. Now, that is the offer that I'm aware of as of today. Will Iran take it or not? It's hard to say because, as I said to you before, they don't need to enrich their own uranium and they don't need to have their own nukes. All they have to do is buy a few from Pakistan. They could publicly announce it, and the thing is then then Pakistan will come under a lot of pressure from the United States and the global community. And this is part of the reason why they no country wants to give any nukes to Iran. They want them to figure out how to enrich them themselves and get them fast so that no one else can take responsibility for it. And then we go back to what all of those scientists have been doing, from those Russian scientists, Chinese scientists, and Pakistanis have been doing there for the last 6 months. My understanding is they were there to help them to enrich their own nukes, create their own nukes, and they can come out and say that their own scientists did that. The United States went out and murdered a whole bunch of Iranian scientists to try and prevent that as well. During that period, there were some huge earthquakes heard in Iran underground. And that is something that not too many people have taken too seriously. We haven't heard about these massive earthquakes in Iran during the 12-day war. People haven't talked about that. But the earthquakes that happened in Iran during the 12-day war were the same size as the earthquakes heard beneath North Korea when North Korea was testing their nukes underground secretly before they released to the world that they had them. So many people believe that Iran already has those nukes. They tested them, the Russians, the Chinese scientists, they helped them to figure it out, and they've already tested those nukes. And I would like to know the truth behind that, whether that is true. That is something that I don't think the United States media would want to cover, because it would be an embarrassment for the United States, because that was their cover for what they did. It's highly likely in the next year, Iran comes out and says, we have nukes. You do one of those things again, those preemptive strikes on us again, we will launch our nukes on Israel. And then that changes everything. Now, myself, I'm kind of the belief that, and there's so many people against this, but I'm of the belief that nuclear proliferation might actually make the world a better place. If rational actors in multiple countries have nukes, and they're aware that if they nuke one country, the nuke's going to come back, and mutually assured destruction, it might actually prevent wars happening. And it might even prevent the Israelis, the Zionists that control political, the politics in many countries, and they use their political power to create wars, and they get rich off these wars. If nuclear proliferation happens, these people are going to have a lot of trouble creating those wars. If everyone has nukes, they're going to have to figure out a new way. And I think these wars that the Zionists have been, these proxy wars all over the world that the United States has been conducting as well, if they went away, perhaps the world would be a better place. So it's hard to say, but I'm leaning towards nuclear proliferation being a good thing. People will, it's the same as everybody having guns. In Australia, if everyone's a lunatic and doing preemptive strikes, crime rate is all over the place, you kind of need a gun to protect yourself. If the United States is going to preemptively strike countries that they don't like, and the only thing preventing them from doing that is if that country has nukes, then every country would want to have nukes. So this is a discussion I dare say many countries worldwide are having not only with themselves but their neighbors. Maybe we all should have nukes. Maybe we all should, because the United States could preemptively strike us at any moment. And also, the sanctions that were on North Korea, if other countries get nukes, then the United States can get in there and sanction them. But all it's going to do with every country that has nukes, and then the United States tries to cut them out of the global economy, those countries will start trading with each other and BRICS, and the United States will continue to isolate itself in the world. Iran getting nukes and being cut out of the global economy because they have nukes, they won't be able to attack Iran. Iran will have the ability to fund proxies in the area and cause Israel a lot of pain moving forward. And overall, it will hurt the United States economy, because we're now at a point where every new country that the United States sanctions, it hurts the United States just as much as the country that they're sanctioning. Because those countries now, there's so many countries that are sanctioned and cut out of the United States, trading bloc, that they just switch over to BRICS now, and they don't really lose anything. And evidence of that is with Russia. Russia's economy has done quite well recently. And this is part of the reason why the Russians were happy with the war, and the United States fell into Russia's trap by attacking Iran, because higher oil prices would only make Russia rich. So that's basically my take on what's been happening at the moment. Moving forward, I believe that the United States and Israel have no choice but to go back and continue striking Iran. And what I think they're going to do is, it might happen tomorrow, it might happen in a month, but they can't let it happen too much longer into the future. I think we're going into a stage where the United States is licking its wounds. They're preparing for the next phase. And the next phase, the strategy will be purely attacking Iran, bombing Iran into submission, dropping bombs all over that country continuously. And there's a distinct possibility that Israel cops a large amount of return fire while that's happening. The United States, this is the beauty of this. We're going to have to try to hear what creative solutions the United States can come up with. Are they going to be able to talk with the Iranians and trick them into doing something that hurts them? It'll be hard to say, because they've got the Chinese and the Russians helping them out. And then the United States will probably realize that the only option left is to continuously bomb that country, sanction it, try to weaken it, and have like a decade-long, conflict, and figure out how to destroy that country. Because ultimately, that is the United States' goal, is to destroy Iran the same way their goal is to destroy Russia. And we're at a point where Israel's kind of running out of time. Iran is now in a position of strength. So it's very interesting to see how this is going to play out. But I'm betting that the United States has no choice but to continue directly bombing, attacking Iran. And so the whole idea that this war is over is just, it's definitely not over. It's a ridiculous argument. The whole idea, I saw some Zionists even in Australia. They came out and they said, Trump, he's a hero. He came in, he bombed, he saw, he conquered, and then he left. And all the people that disagree with him are the woke right. These people are so stupid. They really are. They're just propagandists, no understanding of how this is going to play out. Russia and China have gone to the United Nations and they have given diplomatic cover to Iran. It has now been documented that Iran is the victim in this. It's been documented at the United Nations by the Chinese and the Russians. Israel has now got a very bad reputation, not only for its genocide, but conducting preemptive strikes on peaceful neighbors. I know people are like, oh no, they're evil, blah, blah, blah. Like, show me evidence of that. There's no evidence of that. It's Israel preemptively striking Iran. And so the diplomatic cover's there. It's been documented. Which means moving forward, the United Nations would have an incentive to support Iran any way they can if Israel and the United States was to attack them again. The United States and Israel are not doing themselves any favors. They're soft power wise anyway. They're not very popular these days at all. So, this is something I really don't have an answer to, other than bombing. They'll be bombing, maybe they'll get creative and they'll do some more terrorist attacks. It's funny how the Israelis and the United States call all the Muslims in the Middle East terrorists when they are the ones conducting terrorist attacks themselves, and that might be something that they will do moving forward. Maybe from the Vietnam War they'll bring out the old Agent Orange and they'll start, who knows, some new weapon. They might use a biological weapon. I wouldn't. The amount of war crimes that Israel and the United States have conducted and been a part of recently, many people wouldn't put it past them using any of those creative tools just to try and hurt Iran. And so this war is not over. This peace is not going to happen at all. And I could definitely, if Israel gets weakened anymore, I could definitely see, with all of the support of all the other countries in the region, this does make a good case for Palestine having its own state right next to Israel. If Iran is creative, they might have the ability to get enough countries in the region to actively make it happen. So I don't really have too much good news for Israel. I can't see how Israel can get out of this other than terrorist attacks, mass murder campaign, nuclear first strikes, literally just getting the United States involved and throwing everything they can and just causing as much destruction as possible. It's possible. They could do that. And I don't think we will need to wait till the end of the year to find out. I think things will kick off sooner than that. Might even kick off next month. So watch this space. I can see this getting real nasty real soon. I could see some shock and awe tactics from the Israelis and the United States. I can't see the United States dropping 1 million troops in Iran to try and take over that country from within. I don't think that would be capable. And if they did that, it would be a trap. It would fall into the hands of the Iranians. It would be a trap. The Chinese and the Russians would love that to happen as well. There's also an incentive for the Russians and the Chinese to somehow push Iran into a further conflict with Israel. And so you've got too many players pushing both this conflict forward. The Chinese want the United States distracted in the Middle East and Europe. The Russians want the Israelis and the United States distracted in the Middle East. And so you've got two superpowers that are trying to keep Iran in this fight. So, yeah. Anyway, that's my take on it. I don't have any more information. That's what I've seen so far. It's very interesting. Very, very interesting to see how things can change so fast. We are definitely living in a simulation, I believe. Because, we have to be. You can see. It's like when you're playing a video game, you can like see the future. Anyway, I'll see you guys next one.